Hi, I'm Nick Best and welcome to my strategic analysis of the PPLC, Plumbing and Building Suppliers case study. So this is video 5 of the case study analysis, and what I'm going to be doing here is running through with you my strategic analysis. Now, for many of you, you will have been able to download this one for free, whether you've bought the video series or not. Everyone can download this one for this whole strategic analysis for free from the website. And what my goal is to take that analysis, and for those of you that have bought the video series, try and give you some insight. So it's not just like you just reading through and making your own conclusions. I'm going to give you my thoughts and particularly try and focus you on what this means for the exam and how you go about applying this to the exam and how you're using it on exam days, what the most likely issues are that I think are going to come up in the exam, which of these models are going to be the most likely ones from an exam point of view. What do I think about, why have I raised the points I've raised? This is what I want to be doing, to add some value on top of what the people who are just getting the basic strategic analysis for free, what they're actually getting, okay? And this is also aiming to bring this together from the 3 videos analysing from an E3 point of view the case. There's a little bit of P3 and F3. For those of you doing P3 and F3, then I really do think you need to be aware of the issue strategically. Let me take, I've come onto this one not long after recording my F3 video, where I go through the numbers and the F3 sort of information. And there's no doubt in my mind we're thinking about sort of funding and working capital and things like that. Like from an F3 point of view, you can't do an MPV without then commenting on whether or not it's relevant and viable for the business and appropriate and what the issues are from a business point of view. You need to be aware of these points. From a P3 point of view, I will go through very briefly some of the risks. In most of our E3 models, there are key risks that come out that from a P3 point of view are going to be important for you. Okay, something like the pest analysis, you're going to have a list basically of risks there from P3. So it's very relevant for all the papers. Okay, so by now you know who I am. You'll notice actually some of the slides in this. These are just the freer ones that are available. So some of the ones in here, you'll notice there are some ads and so on, which I'll skip through as we're going through doing this video. Okay, so hopefully by now you know me. Right, so we also know the case by this stage. The case study itself, overriding feeling on it is it's a relatively easy industry for us to get our heads around. We live in a house, or we own a house or a property. We've probably had to buy some DIY items to mend our taps, or to mend our door, or to put a building or extension on. Depends on how useful you are around the home to what you've had to do, or you've seen other people do it, or you've been into DIY stores for whatever reason. And this in mind is a help. It's familiar. We can associate with it. Okay. Overriding on feeling on PPLC is they're a relatively successful international operation based in the UK. They've grown through acquisitions. Some of those acquisitions weren't perfect. They might have to sell some of those or rationalise them, move on. I'll tell you what I think they should be doing with those as we go through. And they need to rationalise their structure. There's a definite weakness there. So I'm going to be going through using the models of the strategic planning model. Now, if you've got the video series as a whole, this is you should watch my review of all the models first, because basically I go through this whole process of how all the business strategy models link together, and I remind you of all the key models. I don't want to be spending ages in this video reminding you of all the key models, because I've already done that in video 4. Okay, but the basic process will be this: that to develop a business strategy, we need to know where the business is going. We need to know its mission and its purpose. We need to know specific objectives and how we'll measure performance against those objectives. We bring that into our goals in relation to governance and ethics. So we're running the business in the right way as we go forward, and we consider the objectives of all the different stakeholders. So that's our future position. But developing a business strategy is like going on a trip somewhere. Go on a trip and you're planning your route. You need to know where you are now, what's your current position, so you can look on the map, put it into the GPS or whatever, of where you are now, and you need to know where you're going in the future to plot the route between the two. And that's just like developing a business strategy. We're going to have a look in this video at the pest analysis and the 5 forces, so we understand both the broad and the industry environment, which is what those two models are about. Then we're going to have a look internally at the product life cycle, the BCG. We'll internally analyse the strengths and weaknesses, the opportunities and threats, so we can draw that together and plot our route, plot the business strategy, thinking about Porter's generic strategies and Soft's matrix, the methods of growth such as acquisition, internal development, and we'll bring all that together. And at the end of this video, what I'm going to do is give you, this is my view of where this business should go based on the pre-scene. This is my perspective. Now, a warning to you. Although this is my perspective, and it's hopefully a logical perspective based on the pre-scene, you do need to adapt all of these models that I'm going to go through with you. My final view, you need to adapt it for what comes up on the day of the exam. I could be suggesting that some idea is not very good, and then on the day of the examiner decides to put it to turn the case around, and something is a good idea. So you must adapt what you do based on that. But this is going to give you an excellent starting point. So we are going to start on our first stage of rational planning, which is to define the future, to look at governance, ethics, and the stakeholder map. And with that, that's going to guide our starting point for where this business is going. So, as you know, the mission is the key starting focal point for the organisation. And usefully, somewhat unusually for these cases, we have been given quite a lot of mission-focused information. We've got our corporate values. Trading fairly and honesty, being responsive to customer needs, employing committed people, respect for cultural diversity. And we must run the business with those values in mind. Now, if you've watched my first video, you will know my thoughts on this already, but I want to repeat them just to reiterate them. In the exam, when you see an issue that comes up, you can lead your recommendations and your thoughts back to these values. Let's say there's an ethics issue. You say, no, we definitely don't want to do whatever the ethics issue is, because one of our corporate values is trading fairly and honestly, and that would be against it. As well as just simply being wrong, it's against our corporate values. So you're leading your conclusions based on these values and based on the objectives of being a market leader, deleverage underperforming parts of the business, continuous improvement of products and services. So if there's an issue that's based around improving products, then you can say, yes, that's one of our key strategic objectives as stated. I think it was the chairman stated this, stated by the chairman. Or if it's going to help support us being a market leader, maybe it's another good acquisition proposal. Yes, that's consistent with our strategic, because that's what the mission is. It guides your whole direction. So it should guide you in the exam for the decisions that you make. We're not given many objectives. Now remember, theoretically, the mission is a big picture, high level, too big picture and high level. So we need specific objectives to focus people's minds, to push people towards specific objectives, to motivate people, and for performance measurement, because then we can hold people responsible for hitting those objectives or not. Now, there are very few specific targets in this case. It's hard to do that, therefore, here. Now, the likelihood is that the business do have objectives. We're just not told about them. After all, it's only 7 pages. They can't tell us about everything. But with that in mind, if you find out in the unseen on the day of the exam that there aren't any good objectives, then that could be something you could pick up on. Now, what we do know from the pre-scene is that the comparison that we're given between 2 divisions is not all that useful. They are extremely similar. We can't say one is better than the other. We really want information on retail units or country-based performance. That would give us something to compare. Now, if they've got nothing more than has been given to us in the pre-scene, that would be useful information, and I would want that information. That would be a weakness. I'd really like to see some benchmarking information. Now, remember, benchmarking is comparison of similar businesses often, but this I'm thinking is internal benchmarking of a successful brand against a less successful one. Why are they so successful? I think I'd want to see, let's say there was a small brand of 5 outlets based in France, and they were really successful and really profitable, and their margins were much higher. Why? What are they doing that's so good? And how can the rest of the business learn from that? So benchmarking data, I think, would be really useful. We don't know what they do in that regard, but I'd really encourage that. It's worth making the point they might need to restructure in order to get useful information. As I'm going to go on later on to tell you about my views on the structure, but overriding feeling on the structure is some restructuring to get rid of these 2 divisions, focus around regions, and then even a lower level around specific brands is going to help to get good performance data in those areas. There's no information on non-financial performance measures in the case, so if you look at my bottom point there, the balanced scorecard is something that I personally would be thinking would be a good idea here. Look at the 3 bottom points there. Customer service and satisfaction, product quality, and innovation. Those are 3 critical success factors specifically mentioned in the pre-scene, and there's no evidence that we measure those. A balanced scorecard would be an ideal method to get those 3 elements in there. If I was an E3 examiner, even potentially P3 and F3 it could come under, couldn't it? Non-financial performance measures. Then I think I'd be including that as a key point in this case. Okay. Okay, one of our adverts, as I said, I'll quickly go over these. Look, can I just give you a quick momentary, not advert as such, but just a point for you. I often get people come to strategic level and T4. I do a lot of work on T4, as you probably know as well, who didn't do many mock exams up to that point in their studies. The strategic level and the T4 level as well are completely different. The key to success is doing mocks, past papers at strategic. You can't really do past papers at T4. You can at strategic, okay? But ideally, you'd also do some mock exams based on the PPLC pre-scene, because you'll start to see some of the issues that are potentially going to come up, and you'll start thinking about that particular scenario and how to do this. It will help you on the day of the exam to have seen some PPLC issues. So we do have mocks. Don't have to use ours though. Whichever organisations you use, you can go to this other organisations that provide some really good mocks on this. But I would say do them and get some feedback, because I see lots of students, they just do it and then they don't look, they don't get feedback, they don't get them marked, and they don't use that feedback to help them improve from mock to mock. So really recommend that, just as a generic point for you, both at strategic level and T4. Let me move on then. Okay, so governance. Now governance is primarily P3, but from a governance point of view, I have a couple of issues with what they've got here governance wise. Okay. Now, firstly, a good thing. There are non-executive directors, the NEDs. There are 6 of them, and they will bring independence to the board. However, they've got 7 executive directors. Now, in the UK Governance Code, half of the board should be representative NEDs. The reason being is it gives the NEDs power. If they don't think the executive directors are doing the right thing, they can outvote them. But with 7 executives, if all the executives want to go down a particular route, they are they can outvote the NEDs. That's not good practice. And look, we're not far off there, are we? It's not the end of the world. Now, remember, in the UK's combined code, they do not have to have 7. They're not breaking the law. They would have to just state in their accounts, no, we haven't got half, but we have got 6 and we think that's good enough. Okay, and then it's up to the shareholders to complain. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Now, I'm interested as to why the examiners have given us in our structure an executive committee who seem to be making most of the day-to-day decisions. I'm a little bit worried that basically all the key strategic decisions are made in that executive board, that executive committee, by the executive directors, and basically the NED's roles are just insignificant. If that's the case, that's bad governance, and it makes the NEDs not useful. So that could be something that's I'd probably like to be in the P3 exam above anything else. Okay, but that is a bit of a concern for me. Okay. Now, in relation to other governance points, we don't really know what they do. Do they have committees of non-execs, audit, remuneration, nomination, fair disclosures of directors' pay, good financial reporting and control, risk management would come into that, etc., etc. You see the points down there. Those are all points in the combined code. We just don't know. Look out for information, particularly in the P3 exam, about what they do governance-wise in order to... Basically, if they're not doing any of those things, you should be talking about them, helping to improve that. Okay, so that's my view on governance. Ethics, corporate social responsibility. It's throughout the pre-scene. This will come up somewhere in your exam. It can come up in any of the papers, as you know. Probably more likely is P3 and E3, but almost certainly you're going to get an ethics issue because it's so much a focus of this pre-scene that I'd be amazed if it wasn't in one of the exams for each of the 2 sittings. Okay, so specifically it mentions staff training, development and safety, high ethical standards, minimising environmental damage, safe reliable products. Expect to see one of those 4 as an issue in the exam. And remember, at any CIMA exam, whatever your personal views, you must come down on the view of what is ethically right, even if that's not the most profitable solution. Okay, and I know that there are some students out there, they find it, they think, no, just get on with it. Don't worry about that safety. We just about profits. Okay, but whatever your personal views, you have to put them aside and do the right thing ethically from the CIMA perspective. Okay, that's my quick message on ethics and CSR. Remember as well to link your answer back to the corporate values of fairness and this CSR policy that they've got here in the exam as well. Okay, so for those of you who are watching the preview of the video series, you've just had about the first 18 minutes of what's just an hour video and just one of all of our videos on there. I hope you found that introduction to my analysis of the pre-scene useful. Okay, at least it's got you started, even if you're not going to buy the rest of the video series. But I just thought I'd quickly go through with you what you'd get if you do decide to get everything else. So first thing is an all subject strategic review. So I go through paragraph by paragraph by paragraph through the pre-scene. Of course, you can see my first video for free anyway, and you can see what I do, and I do that throughout the whole of the pre-scene. Then you'll get the rest of this video. Now, what I did on the rest of this video, which you'll get, is basically my review of each of the models. Which of those models do I think is most likely to come up in the exam? Why did I analyse those as they are? Look, you can go and get the strategic analysis, the PDF of that for no charge at all. So please do that, even if you're not going to buy the rest of the video series. But you will get my review and my analysis and my commentary on all of those models as well. And What we also do, which you also get as part of the package, is an overview of all the models too. So basically I give you a review of the models. What I think is really useful is you see how a whole strategic analysis fits together. And it's the first time in many people's cases that they actually see how the models fit into the big picture. Many people haven't ever really thought about how all those models interlink into one big full strategic analysis. So you see all that process and my justification of how I take the business forward as well on the rest of that video, which is basically the rest of this video, as it were. The financial analysis video, I do an analysis of the numbers. We compare them against the similar analysis for a leading comparable real world company. The problem with the analysis as it stands is you can work out things like debtor days, creditor days, current ratio, debt equity ratio, but they're meaningless. As I hope you know from your financial analysis, they're meaningless without comparison. And they haven't even given us a financial comparison, a previous year, to do any comparison. So we've got a load of largely meaningless numbers. What I've done is I've looked at a real life company so we can directly compare against that. And then we conclude financially, where are they strong, where are they weak, what are the issues coming out of that. I've also gone through analysing all of the key financial analysis based issues, which to be honest with you largely relates around funding, bit of working capital analysis in there, which of the issues in the main body of the text would relate to F3. There's not a lot, to be honest with you, but there are some which I go through as well. And the P3 video, I look at everything from a risk analysis perspective. We look at all of the key risks that there are in this particular case. You know what, there's not a lot on the other P3 stuff, like audit, not much on. There's not much on IT in this case. Interesting, unusual actually. Normally there's stuff on IT. So not a lot on that, but there's a lot of stuff we can analyse risk-wise. Okay. Then I go through my most likely issues in all the different subjects, why I think those are the most likely ones. That hopefully get you prepared for those. Well, I'm not going to prepare you, but they're the topics you need to go away and prepare yourself for, basically. Okay. And finally, my strategic level guide gives you my focus on exam technique. There's other stuff in there as well, like what the examiner expects from you and the main reasons people well. But I think the most important thing is the guide to exam technique. This is how you should approach writing your essay, planning, approaching this, how to prepare for the subject as a whole. So that's all in the video, okay? And if you haven't seen it, you can watch the first video for free. We've got another sample of our exam technique guide as well that's around available for you too. So do watch those, and I hope you'll purchase the video series. And if you do, then I hope you'll find it useful. And you know, whatever you decide to do, I do wish you the best of luck going forward towards your exams.